Hello, I'm Georgia and today we're looking at the first certificate B2 exam. I'm your teacher and have been a teacher for many years and have coached a lot of students for this particular exam, the Cambridge First. The Cambridge First is a very big step from the level below, which is B1. So between the preliminary and the first, there is quite a bit of a difference, and you will see as you go along. So where do we start? We start with looking at the format of the exam. So when you decide to do the Cambridge First, to take the Cambridge First, there are two things obviously that you need to practice. The first one is your English, of course. And the second one is your technique, because sometimes you can have very good English, fantastic English. You get there on the day, you do your test, but something goes wrong. And it's happened in the past with my students. Sometimes people have forgotten to transfer their answers from the question paper to the answer paper, and therefore all their scores are 0. We don't want to be doing that. So let's concentrate on what we need to focus on. When we think of our exam, B2, Cambridge, the first thing you have to think about is what is involved exactly in this exam. What do I need to practice? What do I need to do? How do I need to do it? So let's move on. And I'm going to use today the Cambridge handbook, which I would like you to read. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to refer to it so that we get a general idea of the first exam, just a general idea. And then you can go home, open that handbook and look at it yourselves. Okay. So let's have a look and see what's involved with the handbook. Right, so here is the, this is the handbook. I can put a link to this handbook for you. It's easily available online, even if you just Google, you know, Cambridge assessment and you put first handbook, it will come up. And then you can download it and then you can use it. So here we are, B2. First, handbook for teachers, yeah, but you can look at it for yourselves as well. The introduction has the various levels that you can see here for each Cambridge level. So we're going to look at this one is A2 is the first level, and that's Key English Test. When we step up to B1, preliminary, and then we get to B2, which is first, which is the one we're looking at today. And the step after is advanced, which is C1, and proficiency is the top, which is C2. So on the step up from A1 to B1, we are now stepping up to B2. Make the most of your handbook. It says here, the best way to get most from your handbook is to use the digital version. The digital version is updated more regularly. Okay, so I am not going to read all of this because I want you to read it. We are just going to focus here on the most important parts just to understand what you need to do when you do this test. So today we will focus on paper 1, reading and use of English. That's our focus for today, okay? Here is a bit of a general introduction about Cambridge assessment, which you can read. Shows you a little bit what to expect in terms of scores. You can see that the Cambridge scale has scores here of different tasks and scores that you can get at each level. So you start with A1, A2, then you go up to B1, B2, and then you go up to C1, C2. And here you have the certificates that correspond to each scoring. So, for example, we want to do our B2 first for school, or first, sorry, this one is first for schools, or first. So we need a score between 160 and 180. Yes, if we score very high, we can even achieve a C1. You can see that this is a sample certificate of what you get when you do the exam. And it says this is to certify that a student has been awarded grade C. So what does that mean? First certificate in English, Council of Europe, level B2. So you have overall score 170, and you can see how the scores are combined for each part. You will see that on the certificate, reading and use of English are separate scores, although in the exam, the reading and the use of English is one paper, and we will look at it now. So here we go. About the exam, let's look at what is involved with the whole exam. You have the reading and the use of English, which is 1 hour and 15 minutes. There are 7 parts and there are 52 items. So I just want to come out of that screen a minute just to explain something. It is very important that you keep to the timing. If you looked at that reading of use of English, there is a lot to do and not really a lot of time to do it in. So keep an eye on the clock, on the timer, because it's important that you practice so that you get faster and faster when you do these activities. Yeah, the faster you get, the better, the more confident you will get, and the more you will be able to complete that paper in the correct time. So remember, timing is very, very important. Time yourselves, use your phone, use a timer, use your phone, put the timer on 1 minute, 1 hour, 15 minutes, and complete some practice papers. So let's go back to our, okay, 1 hour and 15 minutes. So that's, as I said, it's not a lot of time. It's not. So for all these, there are 7 parts, and you will see how that works. The writing, the listening and the speaking. The writing is 1 hour and 20 for 2 parts. The listening is about 40 minutes for 4 parts, and the speaking is 14 minutes. But we will look at these a little later. Today, I want to concentrate on the reading and use of English. So again, this is just a bit of information about what you need to be focusing on. It's a little more detailed, so I will leave you to read that yourselves. Now, let's look at this. 1 hour, 15 minutes. Remember what I said, timing is very, very important. Reading and use of English tasks. So here is a detailed explanation of what each task is, okay? So for example, if we look at part 1, there are 8 questions, there are 8 marks, so 1 mark per question, multiple choice close. So here you've got the main focus is vocabulary, e.g. idioms. Now, you have all this detail here, but my focus today is not to go through all those details. You can read that yourselves. My focus is to show you practically what you will need to do. Okay, so let's go through it practically and look at the tasks that are involved. Okay, again, here there is a lot of information and just description of what appears in the tasks, but let's look at it in a practical way. Let's just look at the tasks themselves. So here we are. Right, okay. Now you can see here, it's as you look at it, it will become clear to you what you have. For questions 1 to 8, read the text below and decide which answer A, B, C, D best fits each gap. So you have a text and with missing words. The first one is 0. It's an example, so it's done. We know that the answer is C. And the rest you need to choose. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Which word fits that gap? Yes. And don't forget that you need to put your answer on the separate answer sheet. Okay, I will look at this answer sheet with you a little later. So on the separate answer sheet, which looks like this. Yeah. Let's look now at part 2. For questions 9 to 16, read the text below and think of the word which best fits each gap. So it's similar to part 1, but the difference is you haven't got the words given to you. So you have to think, what word do you think is missing? So the word comes from you, and here you write your answers in capital letters on the separate answer sheet. Okay, so it's very important that you follow the instructions exactly. So there's your answer sheet, and that is where you will write your answer. Okay, so if you look at the beginning here, I work a motorbike stunt rider. So the answer is I work as a motorbike stunt rider, and that's been put in here. So here it's for you to work on. Okay, so that is part 2. Moving on to part 3, for questions 17 to 24, read the text below, use the word given in capitals at the end of some of the lines to form a word that fits in the gap in the same line. There is an example. So what do we have here? We have a word, okay? And you have to change this word so that the word fits in the sentence. So let's look at this one. It talks about an incredible vegetable. Garlic, a member of the, oh good, I can't pronounce that, Liliaceae family, which also include onions, is used in cooking. So the word is common, but it's not going to be that word. You have to change it. So the word here is the adverb commonly. Yeah, that's how you changed it. Now, what I usually suggest as tips for this particular part of the test are 2 things. First of all, you must change that word. Don't think it's going to be that. It's not. Okay, so you must change it. And secondly, sometimes think of the negative. That is something I have told my students for years, because sometimes it's a negative. So for example, we looked at the word common. Yes, it could be that they want the negative, uncommon. Yeah, so think, you must change the word, and also think, could I change that to a negative? Be very careful what the passage means. So let's go back. Okay. Moving on to part 4. Now, this is part 4 is the part that my students always love. I'm joking. For questions 25 to 30, complete the second sentence so it has a similar meaning to the first sentence using the word given. Do not change the word given. Now, I know that possibly you will say, oh, we know that, Georgia, we know we mustn't, change the word. But incredibly, people do, and they have changed. If it says have, people have used has. And I said, well, no, that's not the same word. So you have to keep the word exactly, not just change it a little bit, from have to has, or you can't. Okay, so keep that word as it is. So these are the famous transformations, as they used to be known as. So they are sentences that are written in a different way, but have the exactly the same meaning. So let's look at the transformations that we have here. Okay, Also make sure that you write between 2 and 5 words. Count them every time, at least, you know, at the beginning, before you become familiar. Make sure you count them. So look at this one. A very friendly taxi driver drove us into town. We, a very friendly taxi driver. So here it wants you to look at active and passive. So we were driven into town by a very friendly taxi driver. Okay. So here are your transformations to do. Okay. And remember that there are 2 marks for each one of these. So sometimes you can get half of it right. If half of it is right and half of it is wrong, you can still get 1 mark for it. Okay. So this is something that you need a lot of practice on. Okay, moving on to part 5. Here is reading. You're going to read an extract from a novel in which a young woman called Caitlin, excuse me, talks about her life on an island. For questions 31 to 36, choose the answer A, B, C, D, which you think fits best according to the text. Now, as you can see, you get to this part and it's quite a long text, and there's a lot to do. Some of my students in the past have done this, and they have opened the paper and gone to the longest part first, maybe the reading part, and done that first, and then gone back and done maybe the other parts, you know, the vocabulary transformation ones that we looked at after. It's completely up to you. So you can find what works for you. Each student is different. And some students think, I'm going to run out of time, so I better do the longer ones first, and then I'll come back to the shorter ones after. So become familiar with that paper, become very familiar with it, and then you can choose how you're going to do, in what order you're going to do that paper. Okay, let's go back to our paper so you can see how long that is. Yeah, you have, this is quite straightforward. You have questions 31 to 36. It's a straightforward multiple choice, A, B, C, D. Yeah, straightforward multiple choice. Part 6. Okay, this one, you are going to read a newspaper article in which a former ballet dancer talks about the physical demands of the job. 6 sentences have been removed from the article. Choose from the sentences A to G, the one which fits each gap, 37 to 42. There is 1 extra sentence which you do not need to use. Now, this can be quite a complicated part of the test. So as I say, make sure that you time yourselves and that you have enough time to do this one. You know, leave yourself enough time for this activity, which is quite complicated. So what you need to do, you read through, and then you're going to fit A, B, C, D, E, F, G into each gap. But remember that there is 1 extra sentence. Okay, so like with everything else, this takes a little bit of training. In part 7, you are going to read a newspaper article about a young professional footballer. For questions 43 to 52, choose from the sections A to D. The sections may be chosen more than once. Okay, so this is important, that you can choose the same section more than once here. Okay, so what you have, mark your answers again on the separate answer sheet. Make sure you practice doing that. It's important that you are comfortable and familiar with the process. So, which paragraph states how surprised the writer was at Duncan's early difficulties? Which paragraph? So choose your paragraph for A, B, C, D, and put your answer, remember, on the separate answer sheet. Now, that's a sample paper. Okay, here are the answers. We're not going to look at them. And here we have a second sample paper. Yeah. As you scroll through, you'll find, again, here we go, each section, transformations, the long passage with the A, B, C, D, the ones with the missing sentence, and finally, which paragraph mentions all this, and the answers. Okay, here is a sample answer sheet that you can use. It's important that you practice using that sample answer sheet because it is essential for those answers to be inputted correctly onto your answer sheet, because that is the sheet that counts. Yeah, that is the sheet that counts. If you wrote any answers on the question paper and you didn't put them on the answer sheet, they don't count. So make sure that you build in time to become familiar with that process of putting your answers on the answer sheet. So this is your task now. I want you to go back over the first sample paper and do it. Then there's a second sample paper, as we saw, okay, and do it. The answers are in the handbook. So after you have finished the first one, you can then look at the answers, check your answers and see how you did. Then do your second one, again, check your answers that are after the sample paper in the handbook, check your answers and see how you did. Make sure you time yourself, so it's 1 hour, 15 minutes for each paper. Okay, after an hour and 15 minutes, stop. Now, maybe if it's the first time that you're doing this and you haven't done this before, don't worry too much about time the first time. Okay, the first time, just look, see how long you took. Okay, put a timer on, finish the paper, and then say, oh dear, I took 1 hour, 30 minutes, so I need to speed up. The more you practice, the more you will speed up and become more familiar with the paper and be able to do things more quickly. So thank you very much. Now go and do your sample papers and I will see you again to talk about B2 first writing paper. Goodbye.